Welcome to Conspiracy Deconstructed. We are here to perform a complete intellectual inventory of the most compelling, unsettling, and often tragic stories of our time.
That's right.
We don't tell you what to believe, but we provide the sources, the facts, and, the deeper context so you can decide for yourself.
And today we are tackling a story that has, profoundly shaken public faith in the justice system. It's a case where the official narrative relies on a chain of incompetence so profound it almost rivals the most elaborate assassination plot.
Yeah.
We are diving into the death of Jeffrey Epstein.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We're talking about August 10th, 2019. The death of the high-profile financier and accused child trafficker Jeffrey Epstein while he was in federal custody. The conspiracy theory in its most, let's say, compelling and unvarnished form is basically this. Epstein, the man with alleged dirt on powerful people across the globe. He wasn't killed by his own hand.
Right. Yeah.
He was the victim of a, maybe, state-sanctioned assassination designed to silence him, to protect a list of powerful elite co-conspirators.
And the stakes here were, just unparalleled. His death immediately cut off the potential prosecution of these truly heinous sex crimes.
Yeah, completely cut off.
It implicated high-level political and social connections. And ultimately, it revealed a systemic institutional failure, right at the highest levels of the U.S. correctional system.
You really did.
It fundamentally posed the question, can justice truly be served when the accused holds compromising information on some of the most powerful people in the world? It's a huge question.
And the reason this theory has become so sticky, so, durable, is that the American public just never really bought the official story of suicide.
Not at all.
When polls were taken shortly after it happened, only a really small minority, some surveys said, as low as 16% believed Epstein died by suicide.
15%, that's tiny.
It is. And nearly 3 times that many, around 45% of people asked, believed he was murdered.
Right.
That massive, deep-seated public doubt, I think, immediately sets the stage for every piece of evidence and every official finding we're about to review today. It colors everything.
Absolutely. You have to start there. The skepticism was immediate and widespread. So, to really understand the intensity of that suspicion, you first have to appreciate the environment where this death actually occurred. The Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York, the MCC.
Right, down at 150 Park Row.
Exactly. It was an intimidating facility. This wasn't just any standard prison. It was a high-security federal detention center designed for extremely high-risk or high-profile inmates.
People like El Chapo.
People like El Chapo, exactly. Or Paul Manafort, the former Trump campaign chairman. These are individuals requiring top-level security.
And Epstein wasn't just in the general population there, right? He was in a specific unit.
That's correct. He was housed in the Special Housing Unit, or SHU, often called the SHU.
The SHU. Okay.
It's essentially the Administrative Segregation Unit. It's designed to be the most secure area of the entire facility. Inmates there are locked in their cells for nearly 23 hours a day.
So maximum lockdown.
Maximum lockdown. Epstein was moved there shortly after his arrest in July 2019, specifically because of his notoriety. The risk to his safety from other inmates was considered very high.
Makes sense.
And that's where he died, in the SHU, on August 10th, 2019.
The legal context here makes his vulnerability just absolutely critical, doesn't it? He was facing severe federal charges, sex trafficking, conspiracy. He'd pleaded not guilty. But if convicted, he was looking at up to 45 years in federal prison.
Which, for a man his age, was essentially a life sentence.
Exactly.
And we know from the Bureau of Prison's own psychological reconstruction, done after his death, that this loss of status, combined with the prospect of spending the rest of his life locked up, this was a dramatic reversal for a man whose entire identity was seemingly based on wealth, freedom, power.
A complete flip.
It was a massive motivating factor for potential self-harm, according to their own analysis.
And crucially, this wasn't something that just came out of the blue. There was a prior incident.
Yes. Absolutely critical point. Just 3 weeks earlier, on July 23, 2019, Epstein was found injured, semi-conscious in his cell.
Right.
This incident immediately triggered the official suicide watch protocol. It proved the risk wasn't just theoretical, it was real and immediate.
So they knew he was a risk. He was on watch.
He was on watch. And this leads us to the critical, almost inexplicable decision that really formed the first domino in this catastrophic chain of failures we keep hearing about.
Okay.
Despite that preceding, confirmed incident of self-harm, a high-level Bureau of Prisons psychologist removed Epstein from mandatory suicide watch.
Wait, removed him?
Removed him from suicide watch and psychological observation just 10 days before his death.
Hold on. If the man is that high profile, he's already had a suspected suicide attempt. How could a high-level psychologist possibly make that call? That seems wrong.
While former wardens, people who know these systems, consulted by media outlets at the time, they found this decision absolutely shocking, just astounding. It seems to violate the basic principle of prudence in high-risk confinement. You err on the side of caution. Always.
Always. So what does that suggest?
Well, it suggested either a profound misjudgment, like catastrophic error in professional assessment, or, as critics immediately claimed,
Something else.
something else. A highly coordinated decision to intentionally lower the barrier of protection around him. And the immediate outcome of his death, which generated that initial intense media scrutiny, only confirmed those conspiratorial suspicions for many people.
Because his death ultimately allowed him to escape justice, plain and simple.
Precisely. As a direct legal consequence, the U.S. Attorney's Office formally dismissed all charges against Epstein. They filed what's called a nolle prosequi motion on August 29, 2019.
Nolle prosequi. Can you explain that quickly?
Sure. It's a Latin legal term. It basically means the prosecution declares they will no longer prosecute. The charges essentially died with the defendant. Case closed for the prosecution standpoint regarding Epstein himself.
So justice denied for the victims right there.
Effectively, yes.
This legally shielded him from ever facing conviction. Though, okay, the focus did later shift to alleged associates.
It did. We eventually saw Ghislaine Maxwell arrested, tried, convicted in 2021, and another associate, Jean-Luc Brunel, arrested in France.
And he also died by suicide in prison, didn't he? Early 2022.
He did, which added another layer for some theorists. But the key point here is the history. The fact that the system had previously given Epstein that controversial non-prosecution agreement back in 2008.
The sweetheart deal.
The sweetheart deal, exactly.
What?
And then allowed this catastrophe in 2019.
Uh-huh.
It fueled the immediate suspicion that maybe, just maybe, the system was deliberately orchestrating his silence. Again.
Okay, now let's get into the nuts and bolts of the murder argument itself. If you subscribe to the assassination theory, you're not just relying on, general suspicion.
Right. Proponents point to specific things.
They point to clear physical evidence. They point to a chain of security breaches that, when you look at them all together, seem almost impossible to be just mere coincidence. I mean, his own lawyers were, quote, highly skeptical of the suicide ruling. They said the evidence was far more consistent with murder than suicide. That's a strong statement from his own team.
It is. And we really need to look at the, let's say, 4 core pillars that support the murder theory. We should present them fairly, exactly as proponents, including his defense pathologist, raised them.
Okay, let's do that. Pillar number 1, evidence point 1, the autopsy and the hyoid fracture. This is the big one for many believers, right? The smoking gun.
It is often cited as the primary physical evidence. So, the official autopsy, conducted by the NYC Chief Medical Examiner, Dr. Barbara Sampson, it included the finding that Epstein had several fractures in his neck.
Okay.
Most notably, a broken hyoid bone. Now, Epstein's personal defense pathologist, the very renowned Dr. Michael Baden, was present to observe this autopsy.
And Baden's a big name. He's worked on huge cases, O.J. Simpson, JFK. People respect his opinion in forensics.
Highly respected, yes.
Yeah.
And he immediately seized on that hyoid finding.
What was the claim?
The claim that emerged, pushed by those backing the murder theory, was that a hyoid fracture is extremely rare in suicides by soft ligature hanging.
Soft ligature meaning like a bedsheet.
Exactly, like the bedsheet Epstein was found with. They asserted that this specific injury, the broken hyoid, is far more common, maybe even diagnostic, of manual strangulation, homicide, where immense direct pressure is applied to the throat by hands.
Ah, okay.
Epstein's lawyers quickly jumped on this, stating publicly that these injuries were, quote, far more consistent with death by homicidal strangulation.
Wow. Okay, that is a powerful piece of forensic evidence to just dismiss, isn't it? If the neck bone is broken and a top expert says that usually implies manual force, well, that immediately shifts the burden of proof, it feels.
Yeah, it absolutely does. It became the centerpiece of the physical argument against suicide. Now, moving on to evidence point 2, the catastrophic prison failure and the sleeping guards.
Right. This is the operational failure that just destroyed public trust, I think.
And the factual basis for this pillar is, frankly, undeniable. It was detailed extensively in the subsequent Office of Inspector General, or OIG, investigation.
What did the video show?
Video evidence showed that the 2 MCC guards assigned to Epstein's unit, the SHU, Michael Thomas and Tova Noel, they completely failed to perform the required 30-minute security checks.
For how long?
for a stunning 8 hours straight.
8 hours in the SHU with that inmate.
8 hours. In the most secure unit of a federal prison, housing arguably the most sensitive inmate in the entire U.S. system at that moment.
Unbelievable.
And not only did they fail to perform the checks, but during this time, they were reportedly sleeping at their posts. And according to internal computer records, they were making personal searches online, surfing the web.
So not just neglect, but active dereliction of duty.
And then, to make matters even worse, they repeatedly signed official prison logs affirming they had performed the checks every 30 minutes, systematically falsifying federal government records.
Okay, for proponents of the murder theory, this cannot be an accident, right?
That's the core argument. They argue that such a total, sustained, and coordinated breakdown of protocol, specifically targeting the time window when an assassination would hypothetically need to occur, could only be intentional. An inside job.
Cleared the way.
They suggest the sleeping guards, the falsified records.
Yeah.
It was all the means of clearing the path for an assassin to enter the SHU, carry out the murder, and leave completely undetected. And the fact that these two guards, Noel and Thomas, were eventually charged with falsifying records, but later avoided conviction through a deferred prosecution agreement.
That just looked like a cover-up to many people.
It cemented the conspiracy view for a lot of the public. To them, this outcome confirmed they were just scapegoats, sacrificed to protect a larger organizational cover-up, shielding whoever higher up might have ordered them to stand down.
Which leads right into evidence point 3, reinforcing this idea. This is about the cellmate being removed and the camera dead zones.
Yeah.
The theory here is that this shows coordination because they eliminated both human observation and technological observation at the same time.
Absolutely. So the official psychological protocol, following Epstein's earlier suicide scare, required that he be housed with a cellmate. That's a standard key protective measure against self-harm in these situations.
Not a sick procedure.
Basic procedure. Yet, his cellmate was transferred out on August 9th, the day before his death.
Leaving him completely alone.
Completely alone in the cell, and therefore completely unobserved by another person inside the cell.
And then the cameras failed at the same time. That's the claim.
Well, the OIG investigation found that the specific camera at the end of the L tier, the corridor where Epstein was housed, was streaming a live feed, but critically, it was not recording.
Not recording, why not?
This is due to a specific failure in the digital video recorder system, something called DVR2. And this malfunction had apparently gone unfixed for 11 days.
11 days it wasn't recording properly.
Correct, for that particular bank of cameras.
So, the claim from the theorists is clear. External forces knew the prison protocols, they knew about the psychological requirement for a cellmate, and they understood the camera system's known chronic neglect.
Right. That's the inference they draw.
They timed the removal of the cellmate to coincide with this chronic camera failure, creating a planned, coordinated dead zone for the assassination to happen.
Leaving a high-profile, potentially suicidal inmate totally unmonitored in what should be a high-security area, but which effectively became a blind spot. Proponents argue that cannot be mere coincidence.
Right.
The sheer number of simultaneous compounding failures, they say, suggests choreography. It suggests planning.
And finally, evidence point 4, which widens the scope dramatically, the elite motivation. This is where the conspiracy explodes beyond just the walls of the MCC prison.
Yes. The general and very powerful claim here is that Epstein simply needed to be silenced immediately before he could potentially trade information about his network to reduce his own sentence.
Spill the beans on powerful people.
Exactly. Information that would inevitably expose his network of powerful associates, people who might have participated in or somehow covered up his alleged crimes for years.
And the documentation, the hints of these connections, is what gives this theory so much fuel, isn't it? We can reference that now infamous 2011 email.
The Prince Andrew email.
Right, from Prince Andrew to Epstein.
Yeah.
It was published after that photo emerged, the one of the Duke with Virginia Giuffre. And Andrew had previously claimed he'd cut off contact with Epstein back in 2010.
He had claimed that publicly.
Yeah.
But the email sent in February 2011 directly contradicts his claim. And it suggests deep ongoing concern, perhaps shared vulnerability.
What did it say exactly?
Andrew wrote to Epstein, and this is a direct quote that became widely circulated. "Don't worry about me. It would seem we are in this together and we'll have to rise above it."
We are in this together. Wow, that language is incredibly potent, isn't it?
Extremely potent. It fuels the theory that powerful, connected figures felt they were inextricably tied to Epstein's fate, and therefore They needed him quieted before he could implicate them in any criminal proceedings or public disclosures.
And the sheer breadth of names he allegedly had connections with. Politicians, foreign dignitaries, billionaires. It provided the ultimate motive for murder, according to this theory. Silence was paramount.
So, okay, we have a case for murder that's built on, credible forensic observation from respected pathologists, undeniable operational failures within the prison, and the ultimate motive, self-preservation among the global elite. It's a highly compelling narrative.
It really is. It makes a certain kind of dark sense.
It does. Now let's pivot to the official investigation findings. These systematically argue that the reality wasn't a sophisticated murder plot, but rather massive, chronic, almost unbelievable negligence.
Okay, let's start with that central conflict again, the hyoid fracture. How did the official medical establishment account for the broken bones in the neck, especially when a defense pathologist like Baden suggested homicide? That seems like the hardest point to rebut.
It's definitely the most technical point. The medical examiner, Dr. Barbara Sampson, she firmly concluded the cause of death was suicide by hanging. She acknowledged the fractures, yes, but confirmed to the OIG investigators that the injuries Epstein sustained, including the specific fractures of the hyoid bone and also the thyroid cartilage, were entirely consistent with what's known as non-suspension hanging with a soft ligature.
Okay, non-suspension hanging. What does that mean, and why is that detail crucial here?
Right. So in a full suspension hanging, the body typically drops sharply, causing a rapid, high-impact constriction that often snaps the neck, causing immediate death or paralysis. That wasn't the case here.
Okay.
Epstein's death was determined to be a partial suspension or non-suspension hanging. This means his feet or knees likely remained partially on the ground or bed. He wasn't fully suspended in the air.
Ah, I see.
When the hanging uses a soft ligature, like a tightly wound bedsheet, the constriction process is slower, more gradual. As the person loses consciousness and inevitably spasms or convulses,
Right.
they can put immense, twisting, uneven pressure on that sheet against the neck structures.
So the pressure is sustained, but maybe slightly off-kilter and prolonged compared to a sudden drop.
Exactly. Dr. Amdes and Sampson argued that while hyoid fractures might be less common in soft ligature hangings compared to, say, hard ligature hangings or manual strangulation, they are absolutely not exclusive to homicide.
Okay.
They could occur, especially in older individuals like Epstein, whose bones might be more calcified and brittle, and particularly with the specific dynamics of the partial suspension scenario found in his cell. The medical conclusion was that the total package of injuries matched the physical mechanism found at the scene.
But isn't the key distinction between suicide and homicide often the presence of a struggle? Did the medical examiner find any evidence that he fought back, like against an attacker?
And that is the ultimate medical rebuttal to the murder claim. Dr. Sampson stressed the complete lack of expected homicide evidence in that regard. Meaning, in a struggle, particularly one involving manual strangulation, where someone is fighting for their life, you would absolutely expect to see defensive wounds.
Like scratches, bruises.
Exactly. The medical examiner found no marks on Epstein's hands suggesting he fought someone off, no broken fingernails, no skin or debris under his nails, no contusions or bruises to his knuckles that would indicate he was throwing punches or pushing someone away.
Nothing like that.
Nothing. Beyond a very minor abrasion on his arm, which was considered consistent with possibly convulsing against a bed or wall during the hanging process itself, there was no other significant external bruising on his body indicative of a violent struggle.
So the lack of defensive wounds is the medical system's strongest argument that he wasn't fighting for his life against another person.
It's a very strong counterpoint to the homicide theory. Furthermore, the blood toxicology reports came back clean. No medications, no illegal substances that would suggest he was drugged or incapacitated before the act occurred.
Okay.
So the official conclusion remained: physical self-harm, suicide by hanging. Now, if we accept this medical finding, we then have to revisit those catastrophic jail failures.
Right, because they still happened.
They absolutely still happen, and they become the core of the state's incompetence defense, if you will.
Attorney General William Barr himself called it a perfect storm of screw-ups. That's a direct quote. How does the OIG investigation explain the simultaneous failures, the guards, the cellmate removal, the cameras, without suggesting some kind of coordination?
Well, the OIG investigation explicitly stated they found no evidence contradicting the FBI's determination of suicide. And crucially, no evidence suggesting a criminal enterprise or conspiracy was involved in his death.
So what did they find?
Instead, they found widespread, entrenched administrative misconduct, profound poor judgment, and just a systemic failure to perform basic duties really at every level of the MCC staff hierarchy. It wasn't one or two bad apples, it was the whole orchard, basically.
So the systemic breakdown itself was the assassin, in a way. The incompetence killed him.
Precisely. The failure was endemic. It reflected what the OIG later described quite bluntly as a broken system. Consider the material handler, for instance, the person responsible for overseeing the SHU shift the night Epstein died.
Okay.
That individual was working 3 consecutive 8-hour shifts.
It's 24 hours straight.
A staggering 24 hours straight. Why?
Right.
Because of chronic, severe staffing shortages at the facility. This exhaustion directly contributed to the failure to conduct mandatory rounds properly, according to the OIG.
Wow. Okay, that immediately undercuts the idea of some sleek, coordinated plot, doesn't it? If the facility is literally operating with essential staff working 24-hour shifts.
Right.
The system is already fundamentally compromised. It's incapable of maintaining high security integrity under those conditions.
It absolutely supports the argument made by the defense attorneys for the charged guards, Noel and Thomas. Remember, they claimed they were just scapegoats.
Yeah.
They argued that the institution's failure to adequately staff and train people for the high security unit created conditions where cutting corners wasn't just possible, it was almost routine, it was normalized.
So their specific dereliction was a symptom of a larger illness, not a deliberate, isolated plot.
That was their argument. And their deferred prosecution, while incredibly frustrating to the public and victims, legally suggested that their actions were viewed more through the lens of neglect and exhaustion within a broken system, rather than active participation in a criminal murder conspiracy.
Okay, let's focus intensely on the cameras again, because that feels so deliberate to people. The conspiracy theory leans heavily on the idea that the unrecorded video outside his cell was, conveniently turned off for the murder.
The OIG investigation really dug into this thoroughly. They determined that the digital video recorder system, DVR2, the specific piece of hardware responsible for recording footage from about half the prison's cameras, including the crucial one outside Epstein's cell, it began failing on July 29, 2019.
July 29th, that's 11 days before his death.
11 days before. MCC personnel actually discovered the failure on August 8th, 2 days before the death. But for reasons attributed to mismanagement and lack of urgency, they failed to repair it before Epstein died on August 10th.
So the equipment was genuinely defective and neglected for almost 2 weeks. It wasn't manually disabled for a single target on a single night.
Correct. That's the finding. The OIG reports identified long-standing, recurring failures within the Bureau of Prison Systems relating to staffing, yes, but also suicide watch protocols and very specifically camera functionality. These problems dated back years. Years. They even cited internal funding requests for replacement camera equipment that were apparently denied or just ignored back in 2018.
So this system was known to be faulty.
The conclusion was the failure was due to chronic neglect, obsolete technology, and a lack of routine maintenance and functionality checks, not targeted sabotage by some clandestine team for one specific event.
Wow. When you lay out the system's history, like that 24-hour shifts, chronic camera neglect stretching back years, prior funding failures, the explanation really shifts, doesn't it? From coordinated malice to profound, multi-layered, frankly unforgivable negligence.
It paints a picture of systemic decay rather than targeted assassination. And finally, we really have to address the deeper context of public distrust. Why did the public so easily believe the institution was capable of coordinating a murder?
Because they felt the government had failed them before with Epstein.
Exactly. Because the government had, a decade earlier, already proven its willingness, perhaps inadvertently through incompetence or poor judgment, but proven nonetheless its ability to conceal vital information from victims in the Epstein case.
We're talking about the 2007-2008 non-prosecution agreement, the NPA, the one that shielded him from federal charges down in Florida.
That's the one. The subsequent DOJ Office of Professional Responsibility, the OPR report on that NPA, is illuminating. It confirmed that while the prosecutors involved were found not to have committed professional misconduct for reasons of, say, personal corruption related to Epstein's status, their subsequent failure to consult with victims, as required by law, violated the Crime Victims' Rights Act, or CVRA.
And the specific institutional deceit here is what's so critical for understanding the 2019 suspicion, isn't it?
It's absolutely critical. The deceit was profound. The government had signed the secret NPA with Epstein's team in December 2007. But for months afterward, they continued to meet with victims and their advocates, leading them to believe the federal investigation was active and ongoing.
They let them think the case was still alive.
Yes. The government later conceded in internal reviews that they had not been fully transparent and had made a mistake in causing the lead victim advocate to believe the case was ongoing when, in fact, the deal had already been signed, sealed, and delivered. This demonstrated institutional lack of transparency, a willingness to mislead victims, provided the perfect foundation for widespread public skepticism surrounding his death in 2019. The thinking becomes, if the government will effectively lie to victims to shield him once, why should we automatically trust them when they tell us how he died the second time?
That historical context is just crucial, isn't it? Because it demonstrates that the distrust isn't manufactured, it's earned. The official finding is suicide, rooted in an almost unbelievable degree of prison negligence. Yet the theory of assassination persists because the stakes were so high, the connections were so vast, and there was this prior history of institutional cover-up, or at least profound institutional failure and lack of transparency.
It's astounding, really. The truth, in this case the truth of systemic failure, is often stranger, more complex, and perhaps even more disturbing than the fiction of a clean assassination plot.
It really is. So now we come to the human element. Why do people, maybe even subconsciously, prefer the assassination narrative over the narrative of just catastrophic incompetence? Why is the idea of a powerful, controlling cabal somehow easier to swallow than the reality of a completely broken system?
It often boils down to the appeal of control and maybe clarity, doesn't it? The world feels chaotic, random, especially when terrible things happen and justice isn't served.
Yeah, incompetence feels scarier sometimes.
It can. The concept of a powerful, organized cabal orchestrating a political assassination is, paradoxically, often easier for the human mind to process. It's simpler. A murder plot suggests agency. It suggests that someone is in control, even if that control is malicious and evil. Systemic failure suggests, well, maybe nobody is really in control.
And if you believe in a deep state conspiracy or an elite cabal, you know who the enemy is. It's defined. It gives you a target for the anger and frustration.
Yes, exactly. The murder theory provides a clean narrative. There's a powerful, shadowy entity, call it the elite, the deep state, whatever, that is responsible, that offers a clear, definable enemy in a situation that is otherwise morally ambiguous, chaotic, and ultimately deeply unsatisfying because justice was denied.
Right.
It's a way of processing the fact that someone who allegedly inflicted so much harm ultimately escaped accountability.
Yeah.
You shift the responsibility for that escape away from mundane, bureaucratic, systemic failure and onto targeted, high-level malice. It makes more narrative sense, perhaps.
And the reality, as confirmed by numerous OIG reports and journalistic investigations, is that the justice and correctional systems profoundly failed. They failed in their duty to hold Epstein accountable years earlier, and they failed spectacularly in their duty to keep him safely detained in 2019. The list of failures we've detailed: the high-level psychologist inexplicably removing suicide watch, the cellmate being transferred out against protocol, the guards literally sleeping and falsifying logs for 8 hours, the chronic camera failure dating back weeks, all of these things occurring simultaneously. It creates that perfect storm that just strains credulity for most ordinary people.
Yeah.
Feels like too much coincidence.
And that strain, that feeling that it's too much, is the key, I think. The sheer density of distinct and catastrophic failures makes the official explanation feel like an excuse, like a cover story, rather than a sufficient answer.
Especially given the history.
Because the government had already, in effect, helped Epstein escape full federal justice once before with the 2008 NPA and the lack of transparency surrounding it. That history provided the fertile psychological ground for the conspiracy theory to take root and flourish in 2019. People inherently distrust institutions that have already demonstrated the capacity for profound failure and, frankly, deception.
So, the convergence of the extraordinary motive protecting the powerful may be hinted at in things like that Prince Andrew email and the fatally neglected mechanisms of incarceration. It created a situation where the public could easily project malice onto incompetence. They substituted a simple, powerful story, which was murder, for a complex, frightening, and deeply indictment of the system itself, which was systemic decay.
Which leaves us with this crucial question, really, for you, the listener, to consider. If the evidence points overwhelmingly toward catastrophic failure rather than a single conspiratorial action, does the actual effect, Epstein escaping justice, the victims being silenced yet again, does that effect feel any less deliberate to those who are harmed?
That's a powerful point. The outcome is the same either way.
The outcome is tragically the same. So what does the perfect storm of screw-ups truly tell us about the foundational integrity of the institutions designed to safeguard justice in the first place? And perhaps more importantly, how does that knowledge shape your future trust or distrust in official narratives when the next major crisis occurs?
That's a huge question, and definitely one we need to keep asking ourselves. Thank you for diving into all these sources and complexities with us today.